So it's all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
All right, villains, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. Bit of an impromptu podcast, and the reason being it was impromptu was because I just decided I'd pop on. I was at a loose end, and I was actually going back through some of the people that I've been speaking about, and I've been we'd done scouting series on before, and I realized I never did anything on Youssouf Fofana, and I know that we haven't really been linked with him so much this off season, but I actually genuinely believe he's somebody that's gettable. He's somebody that's going to be leaving Monaco, and he's out of the French squad for the Euros as well. I think he's somebody who's attainable, and I genuinely believe he's the perfect midfielder for Unai Emerys Aston Villa. He's everything that we were missing at times last season from the point of view of being that number 6, number 8 type of player. We have enough players, or we will sign a player. I'm very, very confident of that can play in the number 8, number 10 role. But you know, when Kamara went out of the squad last season, when he went out injured, it left a huge void that we tried to fill with Douglas Luiz and John McGinn. And you know, we lost our attacking impetus there, and that was from game week 25 onwards. Lost our attacking impetus. Leander Donker had unfortunately gone on an unfruitful loan to Napoli. It would have been great to have had him around at that stage, but I think the lure of whatever getting his wages off the books and the potential of maybe making a 9 to 10 million pound move to Napoli was too much for the club to let go, and too much for the player as well, considering Napoli the stature that Napoli have in European football at the moment. So from game week 25 onwards, which is 13 weeks into the season. To the end of the season, should I say, we were missing a vital cog, and we were missing Boubacar Kamara. You know, there was no bones about that. You know, I genuinely believe we don't lose to Olympiacos. We don't lose a 3-goal lead to Brentford if we have the likes of Kamara in there. And while it all worked out in the end, and we got where we needed to get to in Champions League football, we want to future-proof, I suppose. With regards to we want future proof that doesn't become an issue in the future. You know, when we lose somebody as pivotal in our midfield, that we don't need to make 2 or 3 changes, I suppose, or 2 or 3 tactical changes to come up with a change or to come up with a solution for what we've lost. So this guy is just a super player. I'm fully sure 90% of you who are watching this will know who this guy is. He's not a secret. It's not a hidden gem. It's just a guy who basically Monaco have said, yeah, he can leave. And when Villa are in a position whereby we need midfielders, and yes, I know we're going to park the PSR for a moment. I've got thoughts on that I'm not going to be drawn into in this conversation because I think it might be slightly controversial for a Friday afternoon or Friday evening, should I say. But we're going to park that for the moment. Let's say we get that sorted, okay? And somebody like this is on the table. It's the no-brainer of all no-brainers to sign this guy if he's willing to come to the Premier League and if he's willing to come to play for Unai Emery, because what he does in that 6/8 role within midfield is just absolutely perfect for Unai Emery. It's like you couldn't write the script even more. What this guy does, he's what am I doing? Trying to tell you what he is. Let me pop up his stat sheet that I have here, and you guys will be able to see it. So, number one, look at his picture there. He looks like a fellow who means business. Anyway, when he's when he's looking down the camera at you there, but he's 6 foot and 1/2 of an inch. He's right-footed. I've him down here as a central defensive midfielder or a central midfielder. But essentially, what he does is that middle third of the field he owns, and he owns it in a lot of ways. He owns it from the point of view of being a pivot player where he can pick up the ball and he can tread progressive passes through. He can stick his foot on the ball and he can create shot creating actions. The guy is just able to play midfield. It's like sometimes you can get caught up in this over analyzation of somebody or analyzing of people and say, oh, well, they're really good in this area, they're really good in that area. And sometimes guys are just able to play the position. This guy's able to play the position. Like France have an absolutely unbelievable squad that they're after bringing to the Euros. But I was slightly, you know, eyes wide open, you know, when this guy was left off. Now, okay, there is a small bit of a question about, you know, you read on message boards and stuff like that. He might be a bit of a handful at times, but there's nothing ever reported in the media as far as I know with regards to that. It's just on message boards. You don't know how jilted lovers, as I would like to call them, and what I mean by that is fans that maybe have heard that somebody wants to leave their club and suddenly just sour on a player, might fabricate something like that. So I don't know how true that is with regards to you know, being disruptive in the dressing room. For me, I know that Didier Deschamps doesn't like that kind anymore. I think he's put up with enough of that in his time as French manager, and you know, maybe that's why he's not with the French squad. I don't know. I'm really trying to find a negative from that point with regards to this guy. The only time I ever heard that there was any type of dressing room kind of potential issues like that was on a message board from Monaco, an English Monaco message board. It was nothing to do with anything that was reported anywhere. So take that with all the grains of salt that you need. I just thought it would offer a small bit of context there for a potential as to why maybe Monaco need to get rid of this guy, because Monaco are on the up and up again, and they had a really, really good season last year. And he was a massive, massive part of it. Looking at his statistics there, you can see he can just do everything brilliantly. He can do everything really, really well. Like his spider graph, he based on what he did for Monaco last season within League One, he'd be our best midfielder. And you know, sometimes, as I said, the overanalyzation of situations like this can lead to kind of paralysis almost in your thought process. Sometimes you just see a guy and you go, he's good. He's really good. And he'd look really good in a Villa jersey under this manager. And that's really what I get from this guy. I really do. Now, from a links point of view, we haven't been, you guys correct me, I haven't been able to find any concrete link to him. I just know that he wants to leave the club. AC Milan were in for him. I think we could offer a nice safe haven above and beyond AC Milan at the minute. Albeit I do love AC Milan. AC Milan, like when I look out for any results in Serie A, it's always AC Milan results I'm looking out for. They're my if you want to call it habitual team to look for within Serie A. I know Arsenal were looking at this guy as well. And now we're in the Champions League. You kind of think, why can't Villa look at this guy? You know, last season we signed guys like Moussa Diaby. That was our big ticket item that we took, and we took from Bayern Leverkusen. Maybe he's had a very fun season at Aston Villa. You know, he got to play European football and everything like that. Leverkusen get to their European final. They don't quite progress from that, but they win the league in the Bundesliga. You know, so we were able to take a player from a team that was primed and ready under a really good manager to go and win the league, probably because we have a brilliant manager ourselves. You know, maybe Moussa Diaby didn't think that Bayer Leverkusen could go and win the league, but that's, look, you take your chances, you take your shots, you take your chances. I would imagine that Youssouf Fofana is looking at Monaco going, we're not going to win the league anytime soon in Ligue 1 in France, because of the way that's been gerrymandered in PSG's favour. You know, so, and Monaco have been, you know, the team from the Principality, they've been a bit erratic over the last couple of years, you know, got back into European football this year, but he's looking to leave, and they're probably looking to sell him for PSR, for their version of PSR or FFP or whatever reasons. But like, why not come to Aston Villa? Why not? Why can't Aston Villa have a 17-time cap, 3-goal scoring French international rock up at their club just like we did last season? So I think Villa should be bold. I think Villa should be brazen when they go into the market. Obviously, look, as I say, for anyone who's joining this one late, we have parked the PSR conversation by the door, and the reason I've done that is because, as I say, I will come on and I will talk more about that. There's a lot of date situations with PSR, and I want to wait for some dates. Like 1st of June is one thing, the 30th of June is another date. I want to wait for those to pass because things are going to become way more apparent when that happens. And at the moment, I'm not worrying about it, because there's people paid at the club to look after that. And as fans, we need to have this wonderment. We need to have this ability to be able to trust the club, that the club are going to do what they need to do from the financial side of things. And plus, at the end of the day, we haven't the foggiest with regards to what's going on with the financial aspect of the club. So I could tie myself up here on a pretzel trying to figure out what's going on from a PSR and FFP point of view. But you have to trust those things with the club, and like they don't bring in Monchi, and they don't bring in Unai Emery, and they don't look at a Champions League for the first time and keep their mouth open so that they can collect flies. What they're doing here is they've got something in place. They definitely do have something in place here, whereby yes, maybe we do sell a player, so be it. Let's replace them. Let's replace that player, and potentially if we sell a midfield player, maybe we go after somebody like a Fofana. And I think that he would be the perfect player for this Unai Emery system. And the reason that I say that is because this guy is just an absolute beast in that midfield area, that midfield third. But he's a beast over about a 40-yard area. He will protect the front of your box, and he will bring you up to the other side of the center circle in no time, and he'll do it really in a really classy way, kind of like Vieira used to do. I'm not, obviously, look, I'm harkening back to when Patrick Vieira used to be that midfield general for Arsenal, but I'm not saying he's at that level, but the way Vieira was brilliant in front of that box. Like, he was a man mountain that you just couldn't get past in the middle of midfield. So if you wanted to go through Arsenal, you had to go to the sides, because you had Vieira, you had Petit in there in that middle of midfield, and both of them were able to win that ball back and carry that ball forward. They were good in that transition over that 35-40 yard that 35-40 yard area. They knew their limitations. They weren't getting into the back post and trying to get their heads on balls and stuff like that, while they did at certain stages. But they knew nuances of the position and of the game, and all you have to do is just look at his heat map here. It's like when Douglas Luiz was under Dean Smith. When Douglas Luiz played under Dean Smith, there was an electric fence that went across the field. At a certain point, that Douglas Luiz was not allowed pass. For good or for bad, that was the case at the time. And when you look at Fofana's heat map here, it's very much the same. He wins the ball back in that right-hand side area. He gets that ball. He gallops into midfield. He can carry the ball. He can progressively pass that ball over short distances. And he's just really good at it. But the biggest thing that I like when I look at Fofana is the guy was born in position. His positional awareness is uncanny. It's I often give out about the likes of anybody who follows me on Twitter will know that I have this irrational itch and dislike for Marc Cucurella, because the man he has no positional awareness at all. It's zero. And if I was his manager, like I couldn't in good conscience start him, because he's just so wild in his positioning that it just drives me nuts. And then when you see a guy like this, when you see a guy like Youssouf Fofana, and how positionally disciplined he is really, really it's kind of refreshing in a way, because midfield has become so kind of malleable. It's become so kind of fluid, I suppose, that some players kind of get lost in the wash, or they kind of get lost in the hustle and bustle of midfield. But Fofana never does. When you watch him play for Monaco and you watch him play for France, he always has a meaningful aspect to his game. There are parts of the game where he can drift out of it for 20 minutes or so, but as he's getting on at 25 years of age now, I'm talking about maybe games I watched from 2 years ago when he was maybe 23, maybe drift out of the game for 10, 15, 20 minutes. But now when I watched him in some of the games he played last year, the man just puts his foot in the ball and he gets that ball moving and gets going. And to be honest with you, I genuinely can't understand why Monaco want to get rid of him. I no idea why they do, but it seems to be that potentially the two of them no longer see a future for each other at the club, and Monaco are trying to make the biggest amount of grade that they can for him, and he's looking to move on to another club. And like, I haven't done an awful lot of talking about the statistics, but when you look at the green line there, you know, he tackles well, very good at interceptions, just recovers that ball brilliantly, standing up, doesn't need to go to ground, but is comfortable doing it. Has a very good dribble success rate, or he dribbles over short distances. You know, his total carry rates, actually, I never looked up what his total carry rates were there. Total carrying distance is actually pretty good. I wouldn't have expected it from looking at him on screen. I wouldn't have expected his total carrying distance to be over 300 yards per game, but it is, and you know, that's something that's actually has made my eyebrows go up and made me like him even more, because you don't feel like he's over carrying the ball. You don't feel like he's carrying the ball in a massive amount. You obviously understand that he is carrying the ball, but it doesn't feel like he's making lung-busting runs. But evidently he is, given by the statistics there as well, which I don't have on this sheet here. So for me, he's one of the most all-round or well-rounded midfielders that could come into this team and could replace any one of our midfielders, from a John McGinn to a Douglas Luiz to a Boubacar Kamara when we need to. Now, I'm not selling off either of those three players, don't get me wrong here, but I do think that we need a complement here. I do think that you need a foursome in that midfield, and you need to have an interchangeable foursome in that midfield as well. So we know that Unai Emery is looking for midfielders. We've been linked to Weston McKennie as well, which I know some people are puking into whatever they're doing at the moment at that. Do not brand Weston McKennie on Jesse Marsh's tactics for those 17 games. I will be doing another piece on Weston McKennie probably after the weekend, but please keep an open mind if Weston McKennie is somebody that is mentioned with Aston Villa. If you only know him for those 17 games of Jesse Marsh, you don't know Weston McKennie. It's as simple as that. But we won't get into that today. Fofana, for me, I think would be, if there was an opportunity and we were given a blank check to go and sign Fofana for, I think it's been mooted for about 30 million. You could get him. Just it's as no-brainer as no-brainers get for me to sign him. Just the way he would fit into this Unai Emery midfield, he would allow us to play the current system we have. He would allow us also to go back into a double pivot situation that we have as well. Or if we wanted to go to a 4-2-3-1, he would even, do you know what, play himself and Kamara in the midfield with, or himself and Douglas Luiz in the midfield if Kamara was out at any stage, as a two-man midfield in a 4-4-2. You could be able to play him there with a three at the back, have him minding the house, have McGinn and Douglas Luiz go forward if Kamara isn't back at the start of the season. He's just such a versatile and such a rounded and such a bloody good midfielder. And I go back to that again. We can have analysis by paralysis here, or paralysis by analysis here, by looking after him. But sometimes you just see somebody who's a good fit, and that's probably all that needs to be said about them. And for me, I'd be willing to throw good money after bad after Youssouf Fofana. From that point of view, I just find him as a really rounded player, and he strikes me as a player that could come in and take the Premier League, not take the Premier League by storm, but you know the way that like Bruno Guimaraes has come in and been just like a real shining light for Newcastle, or Conor Gallagher. Conor Gallagher has been like the main man for Chelsea this season, you know, in midfield, obviously outside of Cole Palmer. You know, that's the type of, if you're looking for the type of player that this guy can be within possession, that's what you're kind of looking at. Papa Matasar is somebody else that springs to mind from Spurs. You know, one of these guys who's got a super engine that gets to ground, wins the ball back, but can contribute then in that 40-yard area between edge of your box, on the D of your box, and maybe on the D of their box as well. It's just it's a nice area to be able to be efficient in, and this guy is really, really efficient in that area. So just wanted to pop on and wax lyrically, I suppose, about him. I haven't seen any of our comments, actually. It's been a long time since I've looked at comments on this one or on these pods, because I've normally done these pre-recorded, but I jumped on here today. Danielle says here, it feels like Super John McGinn fits really well in the Kamara role as a backup. Obviously lacks the defensive positioning, but is physical and is very good at beating the press. I would really like Super John McGinn to get further forward. he can play anywhere. His position versatility is excellent, but just the numbers again from and the eye test, I suppose, from when Kamara went out injured were our press up front without John McGinn being that 15-20 yards further forward. It allowed teams to get a foothold in the middle of midfield, and then allowed to push us back. Whatever defensive midfielders we had were being pushed back onto our high line, and that causes issues itself as well from runners from midfield. And we saw that in the Spurs game. We saw that and against Brighton. So for me, I'd like to push him further forward. So that we could have that press a small bit higher up. Delboy, good to see you, Delboy. Delboy is saying Kamara out till December. I'd imagine so. Like, I don't think Delboy's. I was going to say I don't think Delboy's going to be right for the start of the season. I know Delboy's going to be right for the start of the season, but I don't think that Kamara is going to be right for the start of the season. I just think you do your cruise shit in, was it February? I think it was. You do a cruise shit then. The club is going to give you 9 to 12 months to come back. So you're looking at the turn of the year, I think, based on that, I would imagine. Which is unfortunate. Where else are we here? Paul Miller says United were sniffing around him in January. Yeah. A lot of clubs were. United, AC Milan, Arsenal, all sniffing around this guy. So I'm laughing at some of the comments there as well. Yeah, I think what all is we want young Tim to progress within this team and to become one of our own and one up from our academy. And this isn't to say that he doesn't do it, but I think probably the rigors, I think, of Champions League and Premier League football that we're going to have this year is probably going to see him keep the same place that he has within the squad at the moment, and people will probably jump in ahead of him. I just can't see it not happening. I can't see it not happening, and potentially he does go out on loan. I think a couple of you guys have been saying about that. Cat Cannon, you mentioned there about Dougie to Juventus. Yeah, you said there the Birmingham Mail have linked that. That's all come from Italian sources, that they're saying the Juventus want to sign him for about 30 million, and Villa are holding Stum on 70 million. I think he goes nowhere unless we get the money we want, and I think that goes for every single player we have. Like, as I say, I'm being drawn into this PSR conversation, but I'm not going to go there. I think obviously every player has a price. Like, there's been some wild conversation about Ollie Watkins recently. Like, here in Ireland, off the ball, great show. Don't get me wrong, but they were quoting things like 170 million for Ollie Watkins Arsenal would spend. Nobody's spending 170 million in Ollie Watkins. There isn't a team in the world that's spending 170 million. So to entertain something like that, and then there was conversation came from that as well, and I'm sitting there scratching my head going, this is nonsense. This is bonkers. Where you can't guarantee that you're going to replace the 19 goals next season when you've got a known entity that works in this system. Anyway, it's once again another podcast for another day. But I think the same goes for Dougie Luiz. I think that if somebody wants Dougie Luiz, like if somebody's going to pay 70 million for Teen Koopmeiners, should I say? I think Dougie Luiz, I think 70 million is a fair price for Dougie Luiz. So I don't think we're going to see him go anywhere for 30 million or 34 million that we see there. Not a hope in hell. Teams can bid that all they want, but I think Monchi will roundly extend his hand out and raise his middle finger, I think, to something like that. Unless, now saying that again, the Italian press were linking us with Weston McKennie and Sule in a swap deal for Douglas Luiz. So maybe they want to bring down the price. Maybe they want to bring it down. They want to give us those two players and 30 million for Douglas Luiz. Might color me interested in that situation. But as I say, we'll know more as the weeks go on. I don't think there's going to be a whole pile of movement. As I say, from PSR point of view, I don't think there's going to be a whole pile of movement before. I think this is going to bang really into action. Maybe after June. I think June could be a sparse enough month as well. You'll have some action that will happen after the probably from tomorrow onwards, from the 1st of June onwards, prior to the Euros. And then it's going to take a bit of a break, I think, because a lot of the players that are going to want to be signed, the teams are going to want to sign, are at the Euros. Now, this guy that we have up on the screen here, Fofana, isn't. So maybe he's somebody that does move during the Euros. And, you know, as I say, Villa would, if Villa aren't already alerted to his availability, I think that they should be. I think they should be for sure. Where are we there? Mark Wayne says, don't want midfielder players filling in for each other. Prefer specialized players in each position for a stronger squad. I agree. And the devil on this side agrees, and the angel on this side, or the angel on this side agrees, and the devil on this side disagrees. So what I'm saying here is that you're never going to get 100% like for like replacement. But what you want to do is you want to have like do we want to move away from having a specific blocker in that midfield? And I suppose really look what I'm kind of getting at here is instead of trying to explain it, what I'm getting at here is that squad rotation is going to become so much more apparent. It just, you know, we're reading all about, you know, the amount of minutes and the amount of games that players are playing. And there was a really good, I think it was Henry Winter had something up today about it. And it was really informative, I think, really with regards to, you know, the amount of minutes that players are playing, and that squad rotation is just going to have to happen because, you know, you'll have players retiring at like 28, 29, or injuries would be killing players. So I know why we have specialization. So I suppose what I'm saying here is kind of, it's not exactly what you're talking about here, Mark, and I completely understand that. But I think what you're going to find is the teams are going to want players to be a bit more rounded in midfield. And I think the day of that Marvelous Nakamba type defensive midfielder, maybe the Makelele type, the N'Golo Kante type defensive midfielder, whose job is just to go in there and break up play. They will obviously still have a place within the bigger teams, but I think teams that are trying to balance budgets, trying to balance squad rotation, I think they might look to tailor their approach more towards a more rounded midfield player, maybe one that isn't as good in defensively or as good going forward as some players, but it's an interesting one. I don't think, as I say, there's no right and wrong way to think with regards to that. But I think that midfield will be an area where we're going to see a huge amount of fluidity and flux, I suppose. I think over the next 10 years, it's going to go into hyperdrive. You know, we're going to hear about, I actually fully believe in the next 5 years that we're going to have different names for different midfielders, and that there will be over analysis in the midfield, because it's just going to become such a passive area of the field in some areas, a passive area in the field in some positions, and then in other positions, then I think you're going to need to, like, the box-to-box midfielder might make a massive return. And if Frank Lampard wants to come out of retirement, I'd say in about 5 years' time, there's going to be a crying out for the likes of Frank Lampard, and I know how good he was, and they don't grow on trees. And has there ever really not been a cry out for Frank Lampard? But I think you get what I mean. You know, that box to box type of midfielder that can kind of do everything. But yeah, I don't know if I made any sense with regards to that, because I kind of flip-flopped a small bit. But great question, Mark, and I kind of agree with you. As I say, I do agree with you for where we are at the moment, but I think the future-proofing of your squad going forward will need a bit more rounded midfield position players. I'm going to leave it at that. Everybody. That's enough for Friday evening. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching and for listening. We'll be back next week at some stage. I won't have anything out over the weekend. I'm taking some time away over the weekend, but we'll be back maybe Monday or Tuesday. I've got a couple of people lined up that are going to be coming on, so you won't have to just listen to me talking next week. And Paddy's over in Athens enjoying himself at the minute, so he'll be back next week. So I might get his view. Obviously, if the shirt is announced at any stage, we might jump on for a small period. But yeah, the scouting series will not be coming back over the weekend. I'm going to take a small bit of a break from it. But thanks so much, everybody, for watching and listening. And we will see you next week. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy. And all that's left to say is up the Villa.